Good afternoon. The topic of today's video is tarot cards, my personal favorite. I'm just going to go ahead and dive on in. In this world, here on Earth, we interact with two different dimensions, the third and the fourth. The third dimension is occupied by variables of space and time, whereas the fourth dimension exists in the elimination of these variables. This fourth dimension is known to witches as something different, but it is all essentially the same thing. Some know it under the name ethereal plane or ether, spiritual plane, Akashic records, fourth dimension. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to call it the ether because that's my personal favorite. Within the ether, there exists a total summation of knowledge. This knowledge is essentially the energetic contribution made from everybody on Earth in the form of thoughts, words, and actions. And all of this knowledge exists at once. There is no distinction made between things that happened, things that are happening, or things that will happen in the future. And this type of knowledge that exists within the ether is called divine knowledge. Witches have the ability to extract this divine knowledge, and the process of doing this is called divination. And the most notable way that witches do it is through use of tarot cards. Witches use their spiritual gifts while extracting these cards to interpret them, right? Examples of these types of spiritual gifts, and it is to my belief that everybody has them. Everybody is born with them. Now, whether or not they're awakened to them is a completely different story. Examples of these types of spiritual gifts, examples of them are clairaudience, clairvoyance, and clairsentience. Within the ether, there are this knowledge, this divine knowledge, comes in the form of light beings and spiritual entities. It is worth noting that the soul is a separate concept than the spirit, especially within the context of this conversation. And I'll get into the spirit versus the soul in a different video. In my next video, I'm actually going to be getting into the types of witches that there are and the types of spiritual gifts that we have. So back to the point. Clairaudience is the ability to hear audible distinctions made from spiritual beings within the ether. Clairsentience is having the ability to receive feelings from them. And clairvoyance is having the ability to see prophetic images and visuals given to them by light beings within the ether. If you can recall from my previous video, I drew 3 cards while I was simultaneously giving a reading. Within that process, I was using my spiritual gift of clairsentience. And you can refer to that video if you would like an example of how a witch uses clairsentience. There is a very noteworthy tarot card reader on YouTube who operates underneath the name Tyler's Tarot. It's got about 150,000 subscribers or so. If you would like an example of how clairaudience is best utilized, you could visit Tyler's Tarot page. Tyler's Tarot's page. An example of clairvoyance that you could witness, my personal favorite reader, her name is House of Oshun. So if you would just like an example of how tarot cards are read with heightened abilities in all of those categories, you can see clairsentience with mine, clairaudience with Tyler, and clairvoyance with the House of Oshun. There are different types of decks used within this process, but the most notable deck used is the rider-waite tarot deck. And it is a system of is a universal system of images that are broken down into two main categories. Your major arcana has cards that actually correlate to all of the major constellations on the astrological wheel. So for example, this first card is the Star, which represents Aquarius, the Tower, which represents Scorpio, Sun, Leo, Hierophant, Taurus, and so forth. Major arcana represent the major changes or the major themes that happen in people's lives as they cycle through the 12 houses in their journey here within their physical incarnation on Earth. The minor arcana serve as cards to help you clarify things of the major arcana, or sometimes even just to use on their own, right? So for example, this first card here is the Six of Pentacles. And we'll get into kind of what these cards mean as a debriefing effort, right? The minor arcana are divided into suits. These suits actually correlate with the elements on the pagan pentagram. Air, fire, earth, water. And combined, all of these cards combined together can give you an accurate portrayal of any type of question that you need to ask. So I find myself asking a lot of questions regarding my experiences here on Earth. And I use tarot cards to arrive at an answer for these questions, kind of halfway cheat myself through life. A couple of things I wanted to point out whenever I involve myself in this process are you can use altar tools to help aid you along, combined with your spiritual gift as you're reading. One thing I like to use a lot is incense. You probably noticed the smoke going in the background. Probably wondered what that was. You can use crystals. Got a whole bunch of these. I'll get into exactly the function of crystals and what they can do for tarot cards at a different time, because it is a very lengthy and it's just a very lengthy topic. You can use these altar tools to help foster your involvement in the process of tarot reading. A notable time that I find that is the best time to gain insight through these tarot cards is at 3 a.m., which is the witching hour, because people are already dreaming. And when people are dreaming, they're in a state of contributing to that ether that I was talking about earlier. So you're able, if your question for your reading is surrounded around a certain person, you can wait till they're sleeping and while they're contributing to this ether to gain knowledge and a little bit better of a capacity. Try not to laugh. So, in my previous video, like I stated, I drew 3 cards, right? I drew the Nine of Swords. Swords correlate to air as a suit. Looks like I got the 6. Looks like I got the 6 of Cups, the 4 of Cups. Cups correlate to the water element of the suit. And then I also got the 3 of Cups, another water contribution, right? I did that reading while I was speaking, and I wanted it to give me just a general prospect on this channel and maybe where it's going, but I also asked it to show you, so I can give you an example of the type of energetic contribution I was giving to that reading at that specific time while I was reading it. And the first card it gave me, I believe, was this one. This is the Nine of Swords, as I stated. The Nine of Swords represent thoughts. You can kind of use pictures on these cards to guide you as you're learning them as you go. But this one specifically denotes a state of sheer anxiety. If you can see, the man is holding his head and he's sitting up in bed, just not knowing what to think. He's being bombarded with 9 of these thoughts, air energy, right? So Spirit was cluing you in, or cheating you through the way of informing you that I'm probably somewhat nervous to start this channel and share it with my friends, and let people in on this secret lifestyle that I live behind the camera and behind closed freaking doors, right? So Spirit was halfway accurate in spitting that card out. Not to shame myself or anything. Spirit also spit out, I believe the second card was the 4 of Cups. I interpreted this to mean that if you can see in the card, the guy is focusing on 3 cups in front of him, and he's being handed a massive cup from the universe, to which he's not paying attention to, right? I interpreted this to mean, by the way, cups, as I, just to reiterate, cups are emotion. They are water energies. So while I'm paying attention to all of the emotions that are maybe negative, I'm not witnessing or seeing the massive blessing being handed to me from the universe. So I use that as a way to take note of energies that I don't want to fall into as time progresses and as I begin putting out more and more videos, right? Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. The 3 of Cups. It's it's an energy of communion. And I also interpreted this to mean, I interpreted this to mean, the ether was accurate in spitting this card out for you guys, because this is a card of communion to me. I will note that cards mean something different across all contexts to different people, right? But for the most part, the rider-waite deck and its illustrations, people are able to agree on a simultaneously agree on a universal meaning for these cards. This card, to most people, is known as communion or coming together. In relationships, it means there's a third party involved. There was an energy of coming together, because I'm gathering attention for myself, and this almost seems like I am sharing as I would at a party, or just information as I would to my friends. So that concludes the reading that I was doing earlier. My next video, like I mentioned, as I promised, I will pick up on the different types of witches that there are and the types of spiritual gifts that we all have. So if you are interested in this type of thing, then I will see you there.